When my husband died, my children inherited his $30 million empire. Companies, estates, apartments, cars. I was left with a dusty envelope. On the morning my husband's will was read, the stars and stripes outside a downtown law firm hung motionless in the thick summer air. The polished seal of the State Bar gleamed on the glass door, cold and proud, as if it were silently deciding who deserved justice and who didn't. My name is Eleanor. I'm 69 years old. And on the day my husband's will was revealed, I watched my sons split $30 million between them as casually as if they were trading cards. Stephen took the construction companies. Daniel took the restaurant chain, the coastal estates, the luxury condos, the sports cars, everything, absolutely everything. And I, after 45 years of marriage, after giving my entire life to that family, was handed a dusty envelope that looked like it belonged in the trash. My daughter-in-law, Jessica, laughed in my face and said, "At least you can use it to store recipes, mother-in-law." Stephen didn't even glance my way. Daniel sighed, as if my very presence was an inconvenience. Humiliated and hollow, I walked out of that office feeling like my life had just ended. Tell me, if you were me in that moment, what would you have felt? Rage, betrayal, numbness? What they didn't know was that later that night, when I finally opened that despised envelope in the silence of my home, I would find something that would change everything. Arthur had been gone only a week. Pancreatic cancer had eaten him away in 6 cruel, relentless months. For 45 years he had been my partner, my shelter, the man who built an empire from nothing. He worked days, nights, holidays, and I was always there, right beside him. When he stayed up until dawn reviewing numbers, I brought him coffee and waited. When he traveled for weeks, I ran the house and raised our 2 sons without ever complaining. When banks refused to lend him money to expand, I sold my mother's jewelry so he could get the capital he needed. I never asked for recognition. I never demanded credit. I just loved my husband, and I trusted, with the naive faith of a woman who gives everything, that he would take care of me when the time came. Have you ever trusted someone so completely, only to find out you might have been terribly wrong? The will reading took place at the office of Rose Albright, our family lawyer. I arrived early, wearing my best violet dress, the one Arthur gave me for our last anniversary. I sat there telling myself it was all a formality. After almost half a century together, of course he would make sure I was provided for. Our sons could inherit the business, but surely he'd leave enough for me to live out my last years with dignity. That's what I thought. That's what any wife would think. Right? Rose started reading in her usual cold, professional tone. To my son, Stephen, I leave the construction companies valued at $12 million. Stephen grinned like a boy on Christmas. To my son, Daniel, I leave the restaurant chain, which brings in $8 million a year. Daniel leaned back in his chair, satisfied. The coastal estates, the downtown condos, the luxury cars, the main accounts, everything was divided between them like the spoils of war. $30 million, carved up in front of me. And I sat there, invisible, waiting for my name. When Rose finally reached the end, she paused, shuffled a few papers, and said, "For Mrs. Eleanor Herrera." My heart raced. Finally, I leave her this personal envelope. She handed me a yellowed, dusty envelope that looked like it had been forgotten in some drawer for decades. That was it. My sons exchanged smug looks. Jessica couldn't help herself. "At least you can use it to store recipes, mother-in-law," she snickered. Have you ever felt so small in a room full of people who share your blood? The envelope felt almost weightless in my hands. Weightless, and yet it carried the weight of 45 years. They kept talking about wire transfers, deeds, and corporations, the choreography of wealth, while I sat there, a ghost in a leather chair, No one looked at me. No one asked if I was all right. I stood up slowly, slipped the envelope into my purse, and walked out. No one said goodbye. No one offered me a ride home. Tell me honestly, at that point, what would you have done? Fought, screamed, or walked away the way I did, shattered but silent? I wandered through the same streets where I'd spent my life, the streets where I'd raised my son, supported my husband, built this family. And I cried harder than I had since childhood. That night, sitting alone in my living room, with the silence pressing down on me like a tombstone, I finally decided to open the envelope. My hands trembled as I broke the brittle secrui. Inside, there was only one folded sheet of paper, just one. I opened it, slowly, and saw Arthur's handwriting. That elegant script I knew from love notes, birthday cards, grocery lists on the fridge. But this time, the words knocked the air out of my lungs. For the woman who always truly loved me, bank account number 8, CHE, Swiss International Bank, Geneva. And below that, what you find here is only the beginning. They didn't deserve to know the truth, but you do. A Swiss bank account? What truth? What did my own children not deserve to know? For 45 years, I believed I knew everything about Arthur's businesses. Had I been living beside a stranger? I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, clutching that note like a lifeline. The next morning, with my heart trying to escape my chest, I called the bank. My English shook. The operator's voice was calm. I gave her the account number, my name, my details. There was a long pause. You know that kind of silence that stretches time itself? Then she spoke. Mrs. Herrera, the current balance in this account is 100 million United States dollars. The phone slid from my fingers and hit the floor. 100 million, more than triple what my sons had inherited combined. In a heartbeat, I went from poor old widow with a useless envelope to the secret owner of a fortune that made their 30 million look like pocket change. Tell me, what would go through your mind in that exact moment? Relief? Anger? A strange, guilty satisfaction? But that wasn't all. The operator added, "Ma'am, we also have instructions regarding a safe deposit box your husband left 2 years ago. We can arrange for it to be couriered to you." A safe deposit box? More secrets, more questions. What else had Arthur hidden from everyone? And why? Only for me? The next morning, the courier arrived with a small but heavy safe and a sealed envelope containing the combination. It was our wedding date. June 15th, 1980. Even in his secrets, Arthur was romantic. I drew the curtains, unplugged the phone, and sat down in front of the safe. My fingers shook as I entered the numbers. The lock clicked. Inside were documents, photographs, and a thick envelope with my name on it. I opened it and began reading the most shocking letter of my life. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, I am gone, and our sons have already shown their true colors. He wrote that he knew they had humiliated me, that they would laugh at the dusty envelope. He said it had to happen, that they needed to reveal who they truly were before I learned the truth. What truth? In my final years, he wrote, I discovered things about Stephen and Daniel that broke my heart. He told me Stephen had been stealing from the company for 3 years. Gambling debts. Over $2 million owed to dangerous men. He told me Daniel had been hiding a cocaine addiction for 5 years. He had sold properties. He owed $500,000 to traffickers who had threatened his life. All the proof was in that box. But the worst part wasn't their addiction. It wasn't the debts. It was what came next. What pains me most, my love, is what they planned to do to you. Arthur had overheard them plotting in his study late one night. They thought he was asleep. They planned to declare me mentally incompetent, They planned to have me committed to a nursing home. They planned to take everything and shut me away where I couldn't cause problems. My sons, my flesh and blood. Tell me, what would you feel if you realized your own children had already chosen the nursing home they wanted to lock you in? Rage, horror, or a grief so heavy it doesn't even let you cry. Arthur wrote, "That's why I moved the bulk of my fortune into accounts only you can access. That's why they got the crumbs in the official will, while you hold the true inheritance. The $100 million is only the beginning. There were properties in Europe, investments in Asia, accounts in tax havens, over $200 million in total. All in my name. But," he wrote, "I leave you something even more valuable, the truth. And with that truth, the power to decide what to do with our sons." What would you have done if you were me? Destroy them? Cut them off? Expose them to the world? Or try to save them? The days that followed felt like a movie I hadn't agreed to act in. I reviewed the photos. Daniel with glazed eyes in a nightclub bathroom. Stephen leaving a casino at 3 a.m. with shady men. I listened to the recordings. Jessica suggesting they lock me up. Stephen saying, "Mom was always so naive. It'll be easy to convince her it's for her own good." The people I'd loved the most saw me as an obstacle to be removed. Have you ever realized too late that the people you sacrificed everything for wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice you? They called me soon after, suddenly worried about my well-being, suggesting senior living homes, talking about selling my house for my comfort. They had no idea I knew everything. No idea their father had outplayed them. They still thought I was the naive, harmless mother. That's when I understood. I had spent my whole life as the woman behind the man. Now, for the first time, the game pieces were in my hands. What do you do when you suddenly hold that much power? Over money, over truth, over the ones who betrayed you? Do you crush them? Do you forgive them? Or do you make them face the consequences and earn a second chance if they're capable of change? I won't tell you every step that came next. The confrontations, the lawyers, the evidence laid out on the table like knives. I won't recount every tear, every shout, every desperate apology. What matters is this. The woman they thought they could lock away in a nursing home was the same woman who now controlled the empire. The mother they saw as weak was the one who could strip them of everything or give them one last chance to become men. And I chose neither blind revenge nor instant forgiveness. I chose something harder. I chose to make them work, suffer, and sweat for redemption. I chose to give them a path back, but one lined with accountability. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. Today, as I sit in the same house my sons once tried to take from me, I look at that dusty old envelope, the one they laughed at, the one I cried over. It still holds Arthur's note, the bank account, the secret, the beginning of my second life. But now, it also holds something else. Letters from women we've helped, photographs of projects my new foundation supports, testimonies from elderly women who were abused, neglected, discarded, and who now have hope again. Yes. I used part of that secret fortune to build something new, a foundation that protects older women from exactly what almost happened to me. Women whose children try to steal their homes. Women who are pressured into signing away their assets. Women who are made to feel like a burden instead of the backbone of their families. Because I've learned something. Age doesn't make you useless. Grief doesn't mean you are finished. Being underestimated can sometimes be your greatest weapon. So now, let me turn this to you, the one listening to my story. If you were in my place, sitting in that law office, watching your children grin over millions, while you held a dusty envelope. What would you have done? If you discovered a secret, $100 million your husband left only to you, would you tell your children? Would you share it? Would you hide it? If you found proof that your own sons wanted to lock you away and steal everything, would you destroy them, cut ties forever, or try to save them from themselves? And one more thing. If life handed you a dusty envelope moment, a humiliation so deep it made you feel like nothing, would you let it break you? Or would you dare to believe that maybe, just maybe, inside that envelope is the beginning of the strongest version of you you've ever been? I've told you what I did. Now you tell me, if you were me, what would you have done?